She was abandoned and gave birth on the road. Then a mysterious Apache came and stayed the night had fallen long before Amina even realized it. She walked slowly along the cracked pavement, the streetlights flickering above her like tired eyes. Her small bag, the only thing she owned in the world, pressed against her shoulder, and with each step it felt heavier. But it wasn't just the bag, it was her body, swollen with the life growing inside her, that made every movement feel like climbing a mountain. The city around her seemed alive, yet she felt invisible. People passed by, their faces blurred in the dim light, heads bent over their phones or conversations. Nobody noticed the young woman with fear etched into her eyes, the woman who had been abandoned by the ones who were supposed to care for her. Amina stopped for a moment, leaning against the side of a brick wall. She pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling the tiny movements of her unborn child. Each flutter reminded her that she wasn't completely alone, that even in this dark and lonely night, there was someone who depended on her. Her heart ached not just with hunger and exhaustion, but with the deep, gnawing sorrow of betrayal. She had once trusted people, friends who had promised to stand by her, family who had promised love, but those promises had evaporated when she needed them the most. She had been left with nothing. No home, no comfort, no hand to hold, only the cold wind and the uncertainty of the road. As she walked again, she passed rows of shuttered shops and empty cafes, their windows like hollow eyes staring at her as if judging her presence. Every sound seemed amplified, the distant hum of a car engine, the clatter of trash in the alleyways, the echo of her own footsteps. Amina's body protested with every step, but she forced herself forward. She had no choice. There was no one to turn to. She had no home, and the thought of trying to rest anywhere seemed impossible. Every bench looked too public, every doorway too dangerous. She had learned quickly that the streets had no mercy for those who were alone and vulnerable. Memories of her family and friends flashed unbidden through her mind. She had once been full of hope, dreaming of a life filled with love and laughter. But as the months passed and her condition became evident, people had turned away. The harsh whispers, the accusing glances, and finally, the cold shoulders of the people she loved most left her reeling. She could still hear the words that cut deeper than any blade. "You're on your own now. Figure it out." It wasn't just the abandonment, it was the realization that in this world, sometimes, you could be left entirely to fend for yourself. And she was pregnant. Every step she took, every aching movement, reminded her that the life growing inside her was entirely dependent on her resilience. The wind picked up, and a chill ran through her bones. She pulled her thin coat tighter around herself, wishing she had a warm blanket, a safe corner, or even a friendly smile. Her shoes were worn, soles thin, and every step made her feet throb with pain. She thought about the child inside her, imagining what kind of life awaited them. Would they face the same loneliness she did? Would they understand what it meant to be abandoned at the very moment you needed care the most? These thoughts weighed heavily on her heart, but she refused to succumb to despair. Not yet. She had survived this far, and she would survive a little longer. Somehow, she promised herself, she would find a way. Hours passed like this, a blur of shadowed streets and aching muscles. The city, once a place full of opportunity and laughter, now felt like a labyrinth designed to trap her. Her stomach tightened, a sharp pain that made her stop in her tracks. She pressed her hand against her abdomen, feeling the unmistakable signs that labor might be approaching. Fear gripped her like a cold hand. She wasn't ready, she wasn't prepared, and yet the moment had arrived. Amina realized she had no choice. She had to keep moving, keep searching for some hidden spot where she could be alone and give birth. Panic rose in her chest, threatening to drown her in waves of anxiety, but she forced herself to breathe, one slow inhale and exhale at a time. She turned down a narrow alley, away from the main street, hoping to find some semblance of privacy. The walls were covered in faded graffiti, the floor littered with scraps of paper and broken bottles. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. She pressed herself against the cold brick, her back aching as she sank to the ground. The sounds of the city faded slightly here, replaced by the distant hum of a few passing cars. She gritted her teeth and tried to focus on her breathing, counting slowly in her mind. 1, 2, 3, in and out. 1, 2, 3, in and out. Every contraction brought a wave of pain, but also a reminder that she was strong. She had endured betrayal, hunger, exhaustion, and fear, and she could endure this too. Tears streamed down her face, not just from the physical pain, but from the emotional weight she carried. She whispered to herself, talking softly to her unborn child. "I'm here, little one. I'm here, and I won't let anything happen to you. We'll get through this, I promise." Speaking these words gave her a strange sense of comfort, as if by acknowledging her fear and her love at the same time, she could claim a small piece of control over the chaos surrounding her. She didn't know who she was talking to, the child inside her, the empty city, or perhaps some distant part of herself that still believed in hope, but the words felt necessary. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. Amina's body moved on its own, driven by instinct and determination. Her clothes were damp with sweat, her muscles trembling from exhaustion. Yet she kept going, every moment a battle against her own limitations. She remembered bits of advice she had read or overheard, the things women told each other in whispered stories, and she applied them as best as she could. She focused on the breath, on the rhythm, on the presence of the small life she carried. Each movement, each heartbeat, each contraction was a testament to her courage. Despite the pain, there were moments of clarity, brief flashes of beauty in the dark night. A faint star appeared above the buildings, twinkling as if it were keeping watch over her. The cool night air carried the smell of rain and earth, and for a second, she allowed herself to imagine a world where things might be different, where she might not be alone, where the child inside her would be safe and loved. The vision was fleeting, but it reminded her of why she had to keep moving, keep breathing, keep surviving, for her own life and for the life that depended on her. By the early hours of the morning, exhaustion had settled into every muscle and bone. She leaned against the wall, trying to summon whatever strength she had left. Her eyes were heavy, her body screamed for rest, but the contractions didn't stop. She realized the birth could come at any moment, and she had no choice but to face it head-on. She whispered one last promise to herself and to the unborn child: "I will protect you. No matter what, we will see the light." And with that, she closed her eyes, bracing herself for the journey that was about to begin, unaware that a stranger, a mysterious figure, would soon enter her life and change everything. The first signs of dawn were just beginning to color the sky when Amina realized that she could no longer walk. Her legs shook with weakness, and every step brought a new wave of pain that made her want to collapse. She pressed herself against the cold brick wall of the alley, trying to catch her breath. Her small bag lay forgotten on the ground, and she barely noticed it. There was only one thing that mattered now: the life inside her. The contractions had grown stronger, closer together, leaving her no time to rest. The reality of what she was facing settled heavily on her chest. She was alone, far from help, and about to bring a child into the world on the streets. The fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to take slow, steady breaths. 1, 2, 3, in, out. 1, 2, 3, in, out. She scanned the alley, looking for any spot that might offer privacy or safety. There was nothing but trash and broken crates, and the thought of lying on the cold, hard ground made her shiver. Her mind raced, imagining the worst: the baby in her arms, cold and weak, with no one to protect them. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, trying to remind herself of one simple truth: she was strong. She had survived betrayal, hunger, and abandonment. She could survive this too. Slowly, she lowered herself to the ground, bracing against the rough wall. She wrapped her coat tightly around her body, trying to shield herself from the chill that cut through her bones. Each contraction hit like a storm. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her stomach, feeling the child shift and move in response. The pain was sharp, relentless and consuming, but beneath it all was a strange sense of determination. She whispered softly to the baby as if her words alone could create a protective shield. "Hold on, little one," she murmured. "We're going to make it. Just hold on." Her voice was weak, hoarse from hours of crying and whispering, but it carried an unexpected strength. In that moment, Amina realized that the fear she had felt for so long, the fear of being alone, the fear of being forgotten, was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She was still alive. She was still fighting, and she would not give up. Time became a blur. The sounds of the city outside the alley seemed distant, muffled by the intensity of what was happening. She could hear only her own breathing, the rapid thrum of her heartbeat, and the small, insistent movements of the child inside her. The world beyond the alley did not exist. There was only the struggle to survive the present moment. Sweat soaked her hair and dripped down her face, mingling with tears that she barely noticed. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she refused to lie down completely. She had learned through instinct that staying upright would help her through the contractions. She gritted her teeth and whispered prayers under her breath, asking for strength, for courage, for a miracle she did not yet dare to hope for. The hours passed slowly, each one stretching into the next. Amina felt as if she were moving through a dream, one that was both terrifying and strangely vivid. She noticed every small detail: the rough texture of the wall against her back, the faint smell of rain on the pavement, the distant hum of a car engine. Her mind, despite the pain, remained alert. She thought about what she would do after the baby was born, about how she would protect this tiny life with every ounce of strength she possessed. She remembered stories she had heard from other women, stories of courage and resilience in the face of impossible odds. They were not just stories, they were lessons guiding her through her own trial. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale orange glow over the city, Amina felt a sudden, sharp change in her body. The contractions were stronger, closer together, and she knew that the moment of birth was near. Panic surged briefly, but she pushed it aside, focusing on what she could control: her breath, her position, and the small life she was about to bring into the world. She pressed her back against the wall, knees bent, and leaned forward as best she could, whispering encouragements to herself and her child. "You're almost here. We can do this. We can survive." The words felt like a lifeline, keeping her anchored in the midst of pain and fear. Despite her terror, Amina noticed small moments of clarity and awareness. She felt the life inside her moving, stretching and shifting in response to her own efforts. She noticed the way the morning light touched the alley, painting the walls in soft golds and shadows. The city, which had seemed so indifferent and cruel during the night, now appeared to her as a quiet witness, holding its breath as she faced the most important moment of her life. For a brief instant, she felt a strange connection to the world around her, as if the very air was lending her strength. As labor intensified, her body took over. She gritted her teeth and followed instinct, focusing entirely on the rhythm of the contractions. She had never felt so exhausted, so terrified, and yet so alive. Every movement, every breath, every tiny shift of the child inside her was a reminder of her resilience. She could do this. She had to do this. Giving up was not an option. Her mind replayed the moments that had led her here, the abandonment, the loneliness, the betrayal, and transformed them into fuel. If she had survived that, she could survive this too. Time lost all meaning. Hours seemed like minutes, and pain became a constant companion that demanded every ounce of her attention. Her body was trembling, soaked in sweat, but she refused to collapse completely. She rocked gently back and forth, whispering to her unborn child, offering the small comfort of her presence and love. "I'm here, little one. I'm not going anywhere. We'll get through this together." The words, simple and tender, gave her a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the end of the alley, a soft step, careful and deliberate. Amina froze, her heart jumping in her chest. Fear surged again, but this time it was mixed with curiosity. She was not sure whether the sound meant danger or help. Her eyes scanned the shadows, but she saw only the faint outline of a figure approaching. The stranger's steps were slow, measured, and quiet, yet there was a weight to them, a presence that felt almost protective rather than threatening. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She had learned painfully that strangers were often indifferent or cruel. Yet something about this figure felt different, almost familiar in a way she could not explain. The figure stopped a few feet away, watching her without speaking. Amina could see the faint glint of eyes in the morning light, calm, steady, and watchful. The presence was comforting, though she did not understand why. She pressed her hand to her stomach instinctively, feeling the life within her respond to the stranger nearby. It was as if the child could sense that this person was different, someone who might offer help rather than harm. Amina's fear remained, but now it was tempered by a small spark of hope. Perhaps, she thought, she would not face this trial entirely alone. The first rays of sunlight broke through the buildings, illuminating the alley in a warm, soft glow. Amina, exhausted and trembling, felt a strange sense of timing and fate. She realized that in this exact moment, everything was changing. Her life, once filled with abandonment and fear, was on the cusp of transformation. The presence of the stranger, silent and patient, hinted at the possibility of something she had longed for but never believed she would find: help, compassion, and perhaps even hope. She focused on her breathing again, drawing strength from the morning light and the steady presence nearby. Hours continued to pass in a blur of pain and effort, but now, in the quiet of the alley, a small shift occurred. Amina's determination, which had always been present, grew stronger. She knew that the moment of birth was near, and that the outcome depended on her strength, her focus, and her courage. The stranger remained nearby, a silent guardian, offering reassurance without words. Amina whispered one last promise to herself and her child: "We will survive this. No matter what, we will see the light." And with that, she braced herself, ready to face the most important moment of her life, unaware of the extraordinary events that were about to unfold. Amina felt her body tense as another sharp contraction hit her. Pain wrapped around her like a vice, leaving her breathless and trembling. She pressed her hands to her stomach, feeling the life inside her respond to her fear, to her efforts, to the pain. The alley, which had been a refuge of sorts, now felt both dangerous and sacred, a hidden place where the most important moment of her life was about to happen. Every sound outside seemed distant, muffled, except for the soft, steady presence of the stranger she had noticed earlier. He had not moved closer, nor had he spoken, but somehow his quiet watchfulness gave her a strange comfort. It was as if he understood the gravity of what was about to happen and knew that she needed space but not complete isolation. The contractions came faster now, leaving no room for pause. Amina gritted her teeth and tried to focus on her breathing. 1, 2, 3, in, out. 1, 2, 3, in, out. She pressed her forehead to the cold wall, the brick rough against her skin, grounding her in the physical world as she navigated the storm of pain. Each wave of labor was fierce, stronger than the last, but she had no choice but to endure. She whispered to herself and to the baby, "You're almost here, little one, just a little longer, hold on." The words, though soft, became a chant, a rhythm to match the rhythm of the pain. Her body was exhausted, trembling from hours of strain, but she refused to collapse entirely. She leaned forward slightly, feeling the small, powerful movements of her child shifting inside her. The thought of finally holding the baby, of seeing the tiny face she had imagined countless times, kept her focused. She remembered the nights she had spent wandering, hungry and alone, imagining what it would be like to cradle a child in her arms and whisper promises of love and safety. Now those imagined moments were about to become reality, but with no safety net, no doctor, no nurse, only her courage and the presence of a stranger she barely knew. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The pain was relentless, yet amid the suffering, moments of clarity emerged. She noticed the first rays of morning sun glinting off the edges of buildings, painting the alley in soft golds and shadows. The light warmed her, even in her exhaustion, and she clung to it like a lifeline. She realized in those fleeting seconds that life was a fragile balance of darkness and light, fear and hope, despair and courage. And in that balance, she and her child had to survive. Then the moment came. A sharp, overwhelming contraction and a sudden surge of pressure made Amina gasp and clutch the wall. She knew it was time. Panic threatened to consume her, but she forced it down, focusing on each breath, each push, each tiny movement. Her body moved instinctively now, guided by a deep, primal knowledge that left her mind in awe. She could not explain it, could not plan for it. She could only follow the rhythm of life itself, allowing her body to work as it had been designed to do. The alley seemed to shrink around her as pain and effort consumed everything. Sweat poured from her forehead, mixing with tears that ran silently down her cheeks. Her muscles screamed, her knees ached, and yet she pushed on. The city around her ceased to exist. There was only the struggle of birth and the fragile life she carried within her. And then, as if in response to her silent plea for help, the stranger stepped forward. He moved with careful, deliberate grace, stopping just far enough to respect her space, but close enough that she could feel a subtle sense of protection. His presence was quiet but reassuring. He knelt a short distance away, producing nothing but a calm, steady energy. Without a word, he offered her a piece of cloth, folded and clean, and gestured for her to use it. Amina hesitated for a moment, unsure if she could trust anyone, but exhaustion and instinct told her to accept it. She nodded faintly, her fingers trembling as she took it. The cloth was soft and warm compared to the cold alley, and it gave her a small measure of relief. She realized in that moment that she was not entirely alone. Someone, a stranger, had chosen to stay with her. And that choice, simple as it seemed, filled her with hope. The contractions became almost unbearable. Amina cried out softly, gripping the cloth and pressing it to her chest as she pushed again and again. The stranger did not speak. He did not touch her without permission. He simply remained present, a steady force in the chaos, offering a silent assurance that she could rely on him if she needed it. Each push brought the baby closer to the world, and with each one, Amina felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was terrified of what could go wrong, yet she was filled with a profound awe at the miracle unfolding within her. Minutes felt like hours. She leaned heavily against the wall, gasping and sweating, and felt the final, powerful push. The baby emerged into the world with a small, fragile cry, and Amina's body sagged from relief and exhaustion. She collapsed onto the ground, tears streaming freely, unable to believe the magnitude of what had just happened. The child was small, warm, and alive, and the tiny heartbeat that she felt pressed against her chest made her realize that they had both survived against impossible odds. She whispered broken words of love and awe, cradling the baby with trembling hands. "You made it." "We made it," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief, exhaustion, and pure joy. The stranger, the mysterious Apache, moved closer now, keeping a careful distance. He produced a small bundle of cloths and gently helped her wrap the baby, showing patience and care without words. Amina felt a deep gratitude rise in her chest, unspoken but intense. She had faced the most terrifying hours of her life, and someone had appeared to help, not to judge, not to take, but simply to assist. His calm, steady presence was almost comforting in its silence, and she realized that sometimes, Actions spoke louder than words. As the morning light strengthened, Amina finally allowed herself to rest for a moment. The baby slept in her arms, warm and safe, and she felt a new surge of strength within herself. Pain still lingered, but it had transformed into something else, a quiet pride, a deep awareness of her own resilience, and an overwhelming love for the tiny life she held. She looked up at the stranger, meeting his eyes for the first time fully, and felt a strange sense of recognition, though she knew nothing of him. He nodded once, simply acknowledging her gaze, and then returned to his silent watch. Time passed slowly in the quiet alley. The city outside was waking up, the hum of traffic and early morning voices beginning to fill the streets. But in that small corner, Amina felt as though the world had shrunk to her and the baby, with the stranger as their silent guardian. She fed the baby from her breast, each small suckle a reassurance that life could go on, that hope had survived even in the darkest hours. She marveled at the tiny fingers, the soft hair, and the delicate features that she had imagined countless times but had never truly seen. Every detail was a miracle. The stranger finally spoke, his voice low and calm though still gentle. "You did well," he said simply. No judgment, no questioning, only acknowledgement. Amina nodded, tears still running down her cheeks. She did not ask his name, nor did she question why he had come. For now, his presence alone was enough. He had stayed when everyone else had left. He had offered help when she had needed it most. And that simple act, without words, without explanation, had changed everything. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the alley in a soft golden glow, Amina held her child close, feeling the warmth and weight of life in her arms. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, there would be fears, and there would be obstacles. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. She was not entirely alone. She had survived the impossible. And she had a small, fragile life to protect and cherish. The mysterious Apache remained nearby, silent and watchful. Amina realized that sometimes help came in unexpected forms. Sometimes strangers could become protectors. Sometimes courage and love could grow in the unlikeliest of places. She pressed the baby to her chest, whispering a soft promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that there could be a future beyond the pain, a future filled with possibility, safety, and love. Amina sat in the alley, the baby resting in her arms, still small and fragile but warm and breathing. Steadily, she had survived the most terrifying hours of her life, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel relief. The pain of labor still lingered, a dull ache through her body, and her muscles trembled from exhaustion. She leaned against the wall, her eyes heavy, yet her mind was alert, thinking about the tiny life she now held in her hands. This child was her reason to keep going, her reason to hope, her reason to believe that the world, harsh and cruel as it could be, might still have goodness left. The stranger, the Apache man, remained near her, silent but observant. He had given her space, but now he slowly moved closer, placing a small bundle of cloth and food on the ground nearby. He did not speak at first, simply waiting, allowing her to gather her strength. Amina's eyes met his, and she noticed something in his gaze, a deep calm, a patience that seemed almost timeless. It was as if he understood suffering, loss, and courage better than anyone she had ever met. She wanted to ask questions, to understand who he was and why he had stayed, but the words caught in her throat. There was something about him that felt safe, respectful, and steady. Hours passed in quiet. Amina nursed her baby, her body still weak but slowly regaining some strength. She noticed small details about the Apache man, the way he moved with care, the way he never made sudden gestures, the quiet attentiveness in his eyes. He did not rush her, nor did he demand anything. He only stayed near, a presence that was constant and reassuring. She realized that trust, something she had lost long ago, could sometimes be built through silence and action rather than words. This man, whoever he was showing her that she was not alone. By mid-morning, Amina realized that she needed to do more than simply rest. She needed shelter, warmth, and food if she and her child were to survive the day. She looked around the alley, weighing her options. Most places in the city felt unsafe. Public spaces, crowded streets, and even open doorways offered little privacy and no guarantee of protection. But the Apache man seemed to understand her hesitation. Without a word, he pointed toward a quieter street nearby, one with small shops and back entrances that appeared less frequented. Amina nodded, grateful for the guidance. She still did not fully understand who he was, but she trusted him enough to follow. Moving was difficult. Her legs were weak, her back ached, and the baby, though calm, occasionally cried from discomfort. The Apache man supported her silently, walking slightly ahead but always within reach. Every few steps, he glanced back to make sure she was keeping pace. There was a rhythm to their movement, a quiet communication that did not require words. Amina began to feel a strange comfort in his presence. It was more than safety. It was respect, patience, and understanding. She realized that she had never experienced such steady, calm support from anyone in her life. They reached a small back entrance of what appeared to be an abandoned building. It was not much, but it offered shelter from the elements and a moment of privacy. The Apache man gestured for her to sit, and she sank gratefully to the ground, cradling her child. He knelt nearby, producing another piece of cloth, gently helping her clean herself and wrap the baby more securely. Amina felt tears prick at her eyes. The kindness of a stranger, simple as it seemed, had never felt so profound. She whispered thanks softly, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to relax just a little, knowing that at least for this moment, she and her child were safe. The Apache man finally spoke in a calm, low voice. "You did well. You are stronger than you realize." His words were simple but carried weight. They were not judgmental, not condescending, just acknowledgement of her courage and effort. Amina nodded, unable to speak immediately. The exhaustion from the birth, the fear, and the overwhelming emotion left her momentarily speechless. But inside, a seed of hope was growing. Perhaps there were people in this world who could help, who could protect, who could stay even when everything else had abandoned you. Over the next few hours, the Apache man helped Amina gather small necessities. He provided food and water, carefully warming what little they had brought. He showed her how to wrap the baby securely so it could rest comfortably. He did not rush, did not push, and did not demand anything. The patience he showed was a kind of lesson in itself. Amina began to understand that help did not always come with expectations or conditions. Sometimes, it came quietly, in small gestures, and in the presence of someone willing to stay. As the day progressed, Amina's body slowly regained strength. She could move more freely and began to talk softly to the Apache man, asking small questions. He answered with calm, measured words, giving her enough information to feel safe but never revealing too much. His mystery added to his presence, but it did not frighten her. It made her feel that she had found someone who had chosen to care for her without needing recognition or reward. For the first time in her life, she felt the gentle warmth of trust forming, a bond built from shared silence, shared survival, and shared care. The baby, meanwhile, began to settle. Its small hands reached out, grasping Amina's fingers, and its tiny face relaxed in sleep. Amina watched, amazed at the miracle she held. Every small movement of the child reminded her why she had to survive, why she had endured betrayal, abandonment, and fear. She whispered to the baby, telling stories, singing softly, and making promises she intended to keep. She knew that life would be difficult, but she also knew that she would not face it alone. This child was a reason to keep going, and the Apache man's presence was a reminder that sometimes help could appear when you least expected it. By evening, the Apache man helped her prepare a small, hidden spot where she could rest with the baby. He gathered soft materials and carefully arranged them, making the space as comfortable as possible. Amina watched him work, silently grateful for the care and attention he gave. She realized that he was not just helping, he was teaching her something about kindness, patience, and resilience. She felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that for the first time in a long while, she had someone to rely on. Not as a savior or protector in the usual sense, but as a companion, someone who respected her strength and her autonomy while offering support. As night fell, Amina finally allowed herself to sleep for a few hours. The baby nestled safely against her chest, breathing steadily, and the Apache man remained nearby, his presence quiet but constant. She dreamed, briefly, of a future where she could provide a safe life for her child, where loneliness and fear were replaced by hope and care. She awoke occasionally to the gentle movements of the baby, each time feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The Apache man's calm presence remained a steady reminder that, though life could be harsh, compassion could exist even in the darkest places. Over the next few days, a rhythm formed. Amina cared for her child, nursed it, and began to regain her strength. The Apache man stayed nearby, helping as needed but never intruding. He brought small supplies, offered guidance, and maintained a quiet watch over them both. Slowly, she began to feel a bond with him, not just of gratitude but of genuine connection. She could sense a life lived with wisdom and experience behind his calm demeanor, a presence that offered guidance without demanding attention. Their silent companionship became a lifeline, a bridge from despair to hope. In these quiet moments, Amina reflected on her journey. She remembered the nights spent wandering alone, the hunger, the fear, the betrayal. And now, with the baby in her arms and the Apache man nearby, she realized that the world had not entirely abandoned her. There were still pockets of kindness, still people willing to stand with you in the darkest hours. And though she did not know the man's past or future, she knew that his choice to stay had given her something priceless: trust, safety, and a chance to heal. By the end of the week, Amina could stand more confidently, carry the baby more easily, and even smile without feeling fear creeping in. The bond with the Apache man had deepened. They did not need many words, their actions spoke volumes. He had become a protector, a guide, and a companion. She began to realize that healing was not just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and relational. Through his quiet presence, she was learning to trust again, to hope again, and to believe that life could be good, even after unimaginable pain. As she sat in the soft morning light one day, the baby in her arms, Amina looked at the Apache man with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said softly. He nodded, acknowledging her words, and for the first time she felt that connection fully. She realized that sometimes, people came into your life not to change your story entirely, but to give you the strength to write it yourself. And that was exactly what he had done. Days turned into weeks, and the small bond that had begun between Amina, her baby, and the Apache man grew stronger. Life was still not easy, but the world that had once seemed so cold and unforgiving began to feel a little warmer. Amina had gained strength with each passing day. Her muscles were no longer trembling from exhaustion, her body was recovering from the birth, and her mind was beginning to feel lighter, freed from the constant fear that had dominated her thoughts. Yet the real change was not just physical, it was emotional. She had learned that trust could be rebuilt, that kindness could come in unexpected forms, and that even after betrayal and abandonment, hope could survive. The Apache man stayed close, always near enough to be a steady presence, but never intrusive. He had a calm, quiet way of moving through the world, offering support without making demands or expectations. He brought small gifts when he could: warm clothing, food, clean cloths, even a small blanket that he had carefully folded for the baby. Each act of care, however small, was a reminder to Amina that the world was not entirely without goodness. She found herself relying on him, but in a way that felt natural, balanced, and respectful. He never treated her as fragile or weak. Instead, he treated her as a survivor, someone capable of great courage. Amina began to notice small changes in herself as well. She laughed again, softly at first, at the tiny noises the baby made or at small, simple moments of life in the city. She could carry her child with ease, and she felt a growing confidence that she had never known. The pain and terror of the days she had spent alone on the streets were still in her memory, but they no longer held her hostage. Instead, they had become reminders of her own strength, of what she had endured and overcome. She looked at her child, tiny fingers curled around hers, and felt a fierce love unlike anything she had ever experienced. This love, pure and unbreakable, became the anchor of her life. The Apache man did not ask for recognition, but slowly, Amina began to feel a connection that went beyond gratitude. She watched him quietly as he moved about their small makeshift space, admiring the way he seemed at peace with himself and the world. There was wisdom in his silence, a depth that suggested he had lived through his own hardships, yet had emerged with strength and calm. He did not talk about himself often, but the way he cared for her and the baby spoke volumes. Amina realized that sometimes words were not needed. Actions, when offered selflessly, could say more than any conversation ever could. Together, they began to create a small routine. Amina would nurse the baby, clean and care for their small space, and rest when she could. The Apache man would help with supplies, provide quiet guidance, and watch over them. In those moments, the world seemed to shrink to just the three of them, a small family formed not by blood or obligation, but by choice, compassion, and necessity. Amina marveled at how much she had come to rely on his presence, not as a crutch, but as a source of strength and comfort. His calm had become a shield for her, and the bond between them a silent promise that she was no longer truly alone. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow over their small corner of the city, Amina finally spoke more openly. "I don't even know your name," she said, her voice quiet but curious. The Apache man looked at her and smiled gently. "Some things are better left for later," he replied softly. "For now, let's focus on you and the baby." His words were simple, yet they carried a sense of wisdom and patience. Amina nodded, understanding that trust, like life itself, could not be rushed. It had to be built slowly, carefully, with time and shared experience. And she felt that she could trust him completely. The baby continued to grow, gaining strength and energy with each passing day. Amina noticed the tiny milestones, the first strong grasp of her finger, the small gurgling noises, the moments of calm contentment in her arms. Each moment was a reminder that life, despite its hardships, was beautiful. She felt proud, not just of surviving, but of creating life and protecting it against all odds. The Apache man watched these moments quietly, his presence a constant, reassuring force. He never demanded praise or recognition, but his actions spoke volumes. He had stayed when she needed him most, and that simple choice had changed the course of her life forever. As weeks passed, Amina realized that she could begin to dream again. Dreams she had abandoned, of a safe home, of a future for her child, of days without fear, started to return. She imagined a life where the baby could grow without the shadow of loneliness and danger that had haunted her. She imagined a world where kindness could exist even in unexpected places, where courage was recognized and nurtured. And she realized that this vision was no longer impossible. With the Apache man's guidance and support, she could see a path forward. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city, Amina looked at her child and whispered softly, "We've come so far, little one, and we're just beginning." The baby stirred slightly, responding with a tiny, trusting movement. She felt a profound sense of connection, a bond that went beyond words or explanation. She had faced the darkest hours of her life, given birth in fear and pain, and yet she had emerged stronger, with love and hope intact. The journey had been terrifying, exhausting, and lonely, but it had also revealed her strength and the possibility of human compassion. The Apache man remained nearby, observing silently, offering guidance without intrusion. Amina realized that he had become more than a helper. He had become part of her life, a quiet guardian and companion. She did not need to understand his past, and he did not need to explain himself. Their connection was built on shared experience, mutual respect, and unspoken trust. It was a bond that would shape their lives in ways words could not capture. In the days that followed, Amina began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. She could smile without fear, carry her child without trembling, and rest without constantly looking over her shoulder. Life was still full of challenges. The city was still unpredictable, and danger could arise. But she now faced each day with courage, hope, and determination. She realized that survival was only part of the story. Living fully, with love and connection, was the true triumph. The Apache man stayed with them, sharing the quiet moments, offering support when needed, and silently teaching Amina lessons about resilience, patience, and hope. She watched him with gratitude and admiration, realizing that his presence had given her more than safety. It had given her the belief that life could be rebuilt, even after abandonment and fear. Through his actions, she learned that compassion was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, consistent, and unwavering. As the weeks turned into months, Amina found her confidence growing. She could care for the baby with ease, navigate the city safely, and even find moments of joy in simple routines. The bond with the Apache man remained strong, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. She realized that he had not only helped her survive the immediate danger, but had also given her the tools to face the future with courage. The small family they had formed was unconventional, born of necessity and choice rather than tradition, but it was strong, resilient, and full of love. One morning, as the sun rose over the city, Amina held her child close and whispered softly, "We've come so far, little one. And we will go even further." The Apache man stood nearby, silent as always, but she could feel his steady presence. It was a reminder that she was never truly alone, that kindness and trust could exist even in the darkest moments. And in that quiet, golden light, she allowed herself to feel hope, not just for today, but for every day that lay ahead. Life was still unpredictable, and challenges would undoubtedly come, but Amina now faced them with courage, resilience, and love. She had endured betrayal, abandonment, and fear, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and filled with hope. Her child was safe, nurtured, and loved. And the Apache man, the mysterious figure who had appeared at the moment she needed him most, remained by her side, a silent guardian, a teacher of resilience, and a reminder that even in the harshest moments, kindness could prevail. Together, they formed an unusual but unbreakable family. Each day was a testament to survival, love, and the quiet strength of human connection. And as Amina looked at the tiny life she had fought so hard to protect, she knew that they could face anything, because hope, courage, and compassion had guided them through the darkest hours, and they would continue to light the way forward.